Legal cases, legal issues, legal matters. You're watching WFTV's Law Talk with anchor Christopher Heath and expert legal analyst, attorney Mark NeJame.
All right, let's talk about some of the current cases, issues, and legal matters that our viewers are talking about. Joining me today is legal analyst attorney Mark NeJame of the NeJame Law Firm, and Albert Yanfa, partner at NeJame Law in personal injury. And we're talking about something that deals with personal injury, and that is traumatic brain injuries. And these can arise from a host of different circumstances, correct?
That's right. It's often referred to as TBI, traumatic brain injury. And it's often overlooked by personal injury lawyers. If people think that you have to have this massive mallet to the head type of thing in order to have a brain injury, but that's simply not true. The reality of it is that people often with a strong jolt from a fall or from a car accident, then they can have some serious damage and it needs to be checked out. And sometimes these don't really manifest themselves until later. So that's why it's important if in fact you've had a blow to the head, actually the number one reason that people have, or the basis that people get TBI, is slip and falls. Second is car accidents, third are sports injuries. We hear a lot about the NFL and the sports injuries that have occurred with the players there and the damage that came, but you don't need to be hit 1,000 times by 300-pound linebackers. The reality of it is a simple auto accident can bring it out, a slip and fall in the bathroom, a kitchen, in a residential, in a commercial area, somebody else's premises. You can have significant injury as a result of that, and it can be lifelong, and it can affect you later on. So it's why it needs to be checked, it needs to be evaluated.
And you mentioned something there because, Albert, this doesn't necessarily manifest immediately. And you know, Mark brought up a great point. We talk about like sports. The NFL has obviously been something that we've talked about with injuries like this, and it happening right away, and you see it on the field. But a lot of the players, it's years later when you see it with them. That kind of speaks to what he just mentioned. It may not be immediate due to the blow to the head.
100% true. And, you know, it's not something that necessarily will be picked up on a CT scan or an MRI. You may manifest these symptoms from simple things like headaches to dizziness to things that are maybe more subtle and insidious, like a change in your personality, mood, aggressiveness. It really is important that if you suspect you sustain any type of head injury, that you see a specialist, not just get a CT scan or an MRI. There's a special scan called a diffusion tensor imaging. Now that looks basically at the cellular level of your brain, because your brain is 40% water. And so what that scan does is it looks for interruptions in the flow of water to basically identify where there may be a lack of information, electrical signals and impulses in your brain, and that's how you identify the damage to your brain. That is on a cellular level, but it doesn't necessarily manifest itself right away. It can be something that just slowly creeps up over time.
And that is crucial because, you know, this may be an injury you have now, but it really starts to affect you down the road. And if you didn't do the due diligence on the front end when the accident occurred, now all of a sudden it's years later you're having these severe symptoms. It becomes a lot harder to kind of connect the dots, correct?
It does. It not only to connect the dots and try to figure out where it came from, because it might manifest many years later and you're not even thinking that that accident might have caused it. But then you might not even have any legal remedies, and usually you don't. The lawyers missed it. A lot of lawyers simply don't get into it. They don't know where to go with it. They kind of slough it off. Somebody says they've got a headache and they kind of let it go. And the reality of it is if you don't check it out and you don't get the help, and then years later it surfaces, then it really becomes difficult to then show that your injury, there was a nexus, there was a connection between now your cognitive issues and everything else, and connecting it to an accident that happened many years ago. So it becomes a real issue.
Yeah. Absolutely. And to Mark's point, there is now a strong correlation between TBIs and dementia far later in life. So it's really important. You want to target 6 months as the outer envelope that you try and get seen if you suspect you had any type of head trauma.
And this is something, again, we mentioned, you know, between sports being kind of prevailing out there and we're seeing injuries there. People are more aware of this. I think that head injuries do have long-term, but they might not think about it as affecting them because, as you mentioned, I didn't get hit by a linebacker. I, you know, fell. I was in a car accident. It's not the same, but your brain doesn't know the difference. Your brain is either traumatized or not.
Yeah, your brain is not meant to jostle in your head. It is not a natural state to be in a car. That's something that's man-made. So we were not, you know, built to go ahead and withstand these blows to the head. And also there's another thing about the mind, and that is we all want to deny it, or not everybody, but many of us want to deny, oh, I'm okay, or it's just a headache, and I'll take a couple of aspirin, and be okay in the morning. And the reality is people need to share that with their healthcare provider and their attorney so that the proper evaluation can be made, because it's often overlooked and people want to think they're okay, and many times they may not be.
And that's obviously something to keep an eye on no matter what the circumstances. Get it checked out, find out if something's happening, and just safer than sorry. Albert Yonfa, thank you so much for your time. Mark NeJame, as always, thank you very much. If you'd like to see this or any of the other law talks, visit our website, wftv.com/legal, or join us each week right here on Facebook. I'm Christopher Heath, and thanks for watching.
WFTV's Law Talk was brought courtesy of the Personal Injury and Accident Division of NeJame Law.